All right, everyone. So I decided I wanted to interview Dean Reiber and to talk about how I decided it would be a good idea for us to pursue a relationship with somebody who doesn't have any experience in mortgage lending, but certainly excellent experience as a sales leader and leading sales teams. And as I've said before, most people in the mortgage space don't spend a lot of time on what I want Dean to do, which is teaching people how to prospect and teaching people sales skills. What we typically do is say, here's some scripts, learn these scripts, now go get some business. And we wanted to take it to, I'm willing, I want to make a bigger commitment than that. And so that's why Dean's here. So Dean, so let's just start there. Like, thanks for joining and thanks for doing this. And I just would like to hear some of the things that you and I discussed when we first started interviewing about being a sales leader and what that's all about. And how you, like I've said this before, I didn't hire you to motivate salespeople, because if we have unmotivated salespeople, it's doubtful that I can do anything to motivate them. If they're not already driven to excel in this space, then that's not our job. Our job is to give them the skills. And so let's talk about that. Talk about developing those skills in someone.
So I'm going to start with some basics of sales, right? So there's a formula that we talked about, and you added a piece to it, but it's activity plus skills equals results, right? And you will always make up an activity what you lack in skill, right? So when you're new, you have to do voracious activity because you don't necessarily have the sales skill set to get the same type of results. Right. And you added mindset to that. And I love that. Right. Because that's an overarching influencer in that formula. But one of the challenges salespeople have is they kid themselves. Right. They come in and they have all the best intention. Right. But they come up with all the reasons not to do the right stuff. Because, at the heart of that is prospecting. At the heart of all sales is prospecting. I don't know anybody that has made a sale that never went out and got a sale, that just showed up and got signed paperwork. That right. I've just never seen it happen that way. And I've been doing this for over 25 years. So it all starts with you prospecting, right? And I think sometimes salespeople are unclear of what their intent is, right? When I pick up the phone and I'm calling a partner, what's the intent of what I'm trying to do? The intent is I'm trying to get an appointment, right? The secondary objective is I may be trying to get some information or qualify them to see if they're a good partner, right?
Right.
But the main thing that I'm trying to do is get the appointment, right? And so, you've got to have discipline in how you structure your day, how you structure your week. I think the other mistake that salespeople often make is they don't hold themselves, like some of the prospecting activity, they treat it as if it's wish list, right? Or something that they need to do, like it's a need to do thing, right? They don't put the importance on it as this is critical to their business, right?
So you started to say this, and so I think you mentioned like the planning part of it. So, because I know this is one of the things that you're going to be coaching people on is like planning their weeks out, right? Like, so we talk about this, like time blocking for prospecting. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is just the preparing them. So talk about that. Like, what does it look like to plan somebody's week out for prospecting? What does that look like?
Yeah. So you've got to have a plan for your week, right? You should at the end of the week, whether that's Friday before you wrap up for the week or Monday morning first thing, you should have your week planned out. And one of the things that should go into that is, when am I going to prospect, right? My recommendation would be plan an hour each day for prospecting. Prospecting being making phone calls, because It's not like people are going to get in their car and drive around and knock on doors of realtors, right? You're going to have dedicated time to do that, right? The problem is people take and say, I need to make 30 calls in a week or 50 calls in a week or whatever the number is, right? And they drag it out, right? If this is their beginning of their day and the end of their day, what they do is they make a few calls here, they make a few calls there, a few calls there. And what the problem is, they never build any momentum, right?
Right.
So there's a theory called Horstman's corollary that says that work will contract to fit the time allotted for it, right? So if you take and you build an hour phone block, right, in each of your day, right, and you could do it at the same time every day. You could do. I recommend you vary it throughout the week. Make some in the morning, some in the afternoon, because people vary their schedule, right?
But a specific block.
But you have a specific block. You say from 9 to 10 o'clock, I'm going to make prospecting phone calls. Now, there's a lot that goes in before you pick up the phone, right? I've got to do the research. I've got to have a dedicated list of who I am going to call, right? Salespeople waste a bunch of time. They plan out that hour and then they waste time. Who's the next call I should make, right? Or I got to do some research on this next one, right? And they waste that hour doing stuff that they could have done way in advance, right?
It really is, and maybe that's one of the big takeaways from talking to you that I think that we're going to benefit from is teaching people how to prepare for that prospecting activity in advance of actually picking up the phone. I always think of the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith's character, where he's just, okay, thanks. He gets hung up on, and then he just pushes, nobody knows what those buttons are anymore, but pushes the button down on the phone and dials the next number. Right. And so I'm pretty sure nobody here prospected like that ever. I know I didn't when I was in sales. Right. So,
so the other thing with that hour block, right, is you got to treat it like if I had an appointment with someone, I wouldn't just not show up to it. Right.
Right.
I keep the appointment, right? If I went through the trouble of making an appointment with someone, I keep the appointment. You need to treat this hour block like it's an appointment with yourself, right? And so you've got to reduce all the distractions. You've got to, turn off the email and your text messaging and stuff like that. All the things that could distract you. I mean, the goal is to pick up the phone and dial the next one, get the appointment, right? And if they don't answer, you go to next, and you go to the next, and go to the next. You get the power of concentration. And ideally, one of the things you talk about is creating an avatar, right? Creating like who their ideal partner would be, right? So if they've done the research, they're going to have a consistency of the message with everyone that they call, right? And so it's amazing. You'll get more done in that hour if you're well prepared, right? You've done the research. You have a dedicated phone list. In fact, I recommend just making the notes and going back when the hour's over with and updating Salesforce with the notes once you've done that.
Yeah,
but you don't.
If you make a call and then you're like, okay, I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to like go in and update the database. Like there's a lot you're just not going to be as efficient, right? You're not concentrating the effort.
Yeah. I mean,
you really need it sounds like you need a block of you need to prepare for the prospecting activity. And then you need to do the activity. And then you need to schedule some prospecting maintenance, time in your calendar as well. Right.
Yep. And then then the ones that you don't reach or you left a message or whatever, they go back in the loop for the next time you're making phone calls, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's not one and done type of thing. You got to keep calling them until you have the conversation with them, right?
I got it.
Nobody's going to schedule an appointment based on a voice message, right?
No,
you've got to have a conversation with them, right? And
I always say nothing's going to happen until you talk to somebody.
Yeah. And that's the other mistake salespeople often make is I've got dedicated time to prospect, right? And my objective is to get the meeting. What ends up happening is I get somebody on the phone and they say, well, tell me more about Zenith, or tell me about this, or tell me about that. And I end up having the meeting on the phone during that period of time. I take 10, 12, 15 minutes talking to somebody, and it's really just get the meeting. Hey, that's why we need to meet, right? That's why we need to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
I know you've got some questions. That's why I want to sit down and see if this is a great fit, right?
Right.
Don't have the meeting on the phone. You'll eat up 20 minutes of your phone block that you weren't making phone calls.
Right. That's,
So-
yeah, I can see that be as a pretty common mistake. So talked about let's shift gears a little bit. And because I know we're talking about this as well as scripting. Talk about the scripting process and what that looks like for how and what being really well scripted versus not being really well scripted, what that creates. And
Well,
what does it mean to be really well scripted? What does that mean?
So to have a really good script means that you get your prospect engaged, right? They are interested in what you have to say, right? People get into these scripts where they're just not interesting. Nobody really cares, right? What's the compelling? People do things for their reasons, not for your reasons, right? You got to give them a reason, right? Your script should have some sort of value to them of why they would meet with you, right? I think that's the most important thing. It's got to have something that makes them react in a way to have a meeting with you, right? So however you say that, right? Some of the ones is, hey, looks like you're an up and coming realtor. Looks like you're doing the right stuff. I'm trying to partner with guys just like you. I think there could be some great synergy. Let's meet.
Right. So, well, talk about from a scripting standpoint, what does it take to be good at that? Like what does it need to sound like? Because I think one of the biggest challenges that I've heard, at least with the people that we've had listened to calls, is they don't sound like they're very well prepared.
Yeah. There's a philosophy of it has to become if I handed you something that I wrote and you read it aloud, right? It still sounds like you're reading something aloud, right? Yep. And you didn't generate it. I generated it, right?
Right.
So a script has to be authentic to who you are, right? I would say things on a phone that you might not because of my personality, right? Some people can use humor, other people absolutely cannot use humor, right? So you have to come up with something that's authentic to what you would say, right? There's key components of what you want to say in a script, right? But you have to figure out, how would I say these, right? And then you have to say them as if you generated them at that moment, right? That it's not something I'm reading. It's not something that I rehearsed. It's like, if I picked up the phone, it's like, I had that conversation with you just now, and I just generated it right now, authentically, who I am having a conversation with you.
Right. Do you think some people, so when you see, I can't ever say when you see loan officers, because you're still new to this. When you see salespeople that aren't very well scripted go out and try to make sales calls or try to get appointments on the phone, what stands out to you? What is it? What are those characteristics? They're not really well prepared. What does it sound like?
So there's a couple of key components. One, they don't have a lot of confidence.
I was going to say that's the big one.
So that's probably the first one is they're usually not very confident in what they're saying.
Lack confidence, which is a big problem, right?
Second of all, they often will sound desperate, like I need a meeting. It's like, I gotta have a meeting with you. Desperation is the killer of all sales conversations, right? If you need a meeting with someone, that's they can usually smell like okay, right? So those are a couple of things with if people aren't well scripted, if they're not well rehearsed, if they don't have it where it's authentic to them,
So what are the
if
steps?
they come off as insincere.
Yeah. So what are the steps? Because to me, it seems like, and I'm, just tell me if you think I'm right. My instincts are, I get somebody else's script because I don't have to invent scripts. Like there's enough on Mortgage Coach, and there's a million places. We have a million scripts floating around, the Zinnick stuff that we get. but I got to take somebody's written script and I got to write it out myself the way I would say it. That's the first step, right? I got to put it into Dave's words.
Yep.
And then memorize it. Like I got to memorize that script, because if I don't know the script, I got to memorize it pretty much verbatim. I'm not gonna, because when I'm speaking something I've memorized, I will be able to speak like I speak, but it will sound like it'll come across with a high level of confidence, right? So
correct.
Are there any other steps?
So you're right on the memorization piece. One of the things I recommend that sales folks do is once they've written out what it is they want to say, go stand in front of a mirror and say that to yourself, right? Like as you're going to say it to yourself, right? Just say it, I don't know, 100 times to yourself in the mirror. Watch how you say it, watch your mannerisms, watch all of that. And so you're going to listen to it as if someone else is hearing it. It's weird when you see yourself say it to yourself, you listen to it as if you're listening to it from somebody else.
That's good. That's good.
So that's one of the best ways to really memorize it and learn it. You know, whenever you're making phone calls, I always recommend that people, you know, stand up, they smile, they do. These are all sales basic stuff of when you're making phone calls, right? But you know, people can hear your body language over the phone, right? You want to sound excited. I mean, when somebody gets a phone call from you, they want to be thinking, man, I want to meet with this cat, right? Like, man, this one energized, confident dude. Like, man, I want to learn more about what this is, this guy's about, right?
So when you're confident, you become more attractive to people, right? When you're confident,
absolutely.
You sound like you've got your shit together and you know what you're talking about and you're purposeful. Yeah, those are the type of people want to be with.
So the other piece that I would add to memorize it, right? Once you know it, right, and you feel like you can generate it authentically, then grab somebody, I don't know, a coworker, manager, whoever, and role play. Right now, salespeople hate role playing, and I've heard it 100 times that I'm much better on the phone, right? Everybody thinks they're so much better. I'm so much better in person. Or,
yeah, I'm so much better in person with the client, but not here.
Yeah, and the reality is you're not. You really are. You think you are, but you're not.
You're as good in front of us as you are in front of them.
You just don't want us to know how bad you suck, right? So that's why you do it that way. But do that, right? Because what that will add is a factor of they'll throw you some curveballs, right? So in a script, you say they're going to say this, and I'm going to say this, right? That's scripting, right? But they don't always say that, right? So how do you have to have prepared responses, right? And the way you exercise that is to do some role play, right? Get somebody who gives you an objection, gives you 2 or 3 objections, right? Get used to overcoming objections, right? I used to have when I was a rep, I had a sales manager that he was the worst role player ever. And when I say he was the worst ever, he was like literally the toughest customer you would ever get on the phone. Like it was so difficult as a rep to role play with him because he threw so many curveballs at you and so much stuff at you that when you actually did get on with a customer, like it was so easy because nobody was that tough, right? But it made me really good on the phone because he was that way, right? So. Yeah. So learn it in an environment where you're not going to go blow a big, phone call, right? And make a bad first impression or something like that. So I think role playing your script is huge.
So I've heard preparation, scheduling, block the time, treat it like a doctor appointment. Like if you had a 10 o'clock, I tell people all the time, it's like if you had a 10 o'clock doctor's appointment, you'd go and be at the doctor for an hour. Like, so you would never blow off that appointment. Don't blow off. This is the most important work that you do, especially when you first get started, be scripted so that you can sound confident, and practice like role playing. Like you have to be scripted to be able to do the role playing, and then do the role playing, because it's, where would you rather make a mistake during practice or during the game? And it's much better to make a mistake in practice. And if you're out there playing the game and you make a mistake, you lose the game. If you make a mistake in practice, nobody loses anything, because we're just practicing, and it's getting people comfortable with that. And then I think at the beginning of this, we talked about the massive activity that it takes, at least initially. I think what I'm hearing, because it feels like for all the new people that we bring into this business, and even for some of the experienced, almost all the experienced people, is that prospecting seems like this big elephant in the room that is like, oh man, prospecting. I don't want to do prospecting. Prospecting, it's going to suck. I have to prospect. But it feels like if you chunk it down into these steps, and that's what one of the reasons that I wanted you to come join us is, I want us to have the chunk down. Here's all this is, and let's get good at it. Let's be excellent at it. And that's how we can have this massive success. Am I missing anything in this process? I mean, have I left out anything?
No, the only two steps is, once you've done all that, then you got to make the phone calls, right? And then the key is track your activity, track what happens with the result.
There you go.
Right. One of the first things I ever learned in sales was you have to know your numbers to grow your numbers. You just can't. Like at any given moment, you should know how many calls you made, how many contacts,
So I have
how
to
many people
ask,
picked up the phone, stuff like that.
I have to ask, is that because I stole that from Christine? Did she steal that from you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who did you steal it from?
That was it's good to know that she learned a few things from me.
Who did you steal it
by the
from?
way.
You stole it from somebody. That's not yours.
Yeah, no, I learned it from my sales.
I don't care.
I learned it from my sales manager back when I was a rep. I'm sure he got it out of some sales book somewhere that he read.
Right.
But it's true, right? Here's why it's so important that you track your numbers, right? There's two components to that, right? If you do anything long enough, a ratio will appear, right? And your numbers are your actual activity, but your ratios measure your skill, right? So if I know how many times I dial the phone and I get somebody to actually answer it, well, now that ratio between those two numbers tells me how good I am at getting people on the phone, right? Now, part of that might be luck when I call, or that type of thing, right? But if I have a conversation to the number of appointments I schedule, that's my skill set of being able to convert a conversation with someone into them actually wanting to meet with me, right? So if my conversion ratio is really low, then I know that's a skill set that we can work on, right? If it's really high, if I have appointments, let's say I have 20 appointments, that come out of that, but then nothing turns into a credit pull or whatever. Okay, well then we need to work on the skill set of that appointment and what you're saying on that appointment, right? So you got to know your numbers, so you know your ratio, so you know where to improve your skill.
Right.
Where to ask.
That goes back to I did so many things wrong in this business when I first got in it. And one of the things when I had that first coach who asked me how many leads I got, and my answer was a pretty good amount, and how many closings I was doing, I said a good amount. I didn't know anything. And so I was the dipshit loan officer. And that's why I tell people don't be a dipshit. And then that's why I also tell people not to buy Corvettes, because I bought one when I was 19. I leased one when I was 19. And my lease payment on my Corvette was $500, I think, or $450. And the rent payment on my place was $420 or something. And then Jacqueline was born, and my wife made me get rid of my Corvette. Anyway, well, so dude, this is really cool. This is basic stuff. So I hear preparation, scheduling and blocking the time, being scripted for confidence, role playing for confidence, and then track your activity so you know your numbers, so you can grow your numbers.
Yep.
That's it.
Pretty basic.
Knowing this, it's empowering to me. Because honestly, I didn't love prospecting when I got in the business any more than anybody else, but I knew I needed to prospect if I wanted to eat. And so, but I would just call people. I was probably more like the calendar, the timeline behind you, where today I'm going to prospect, and I would couple of calls and then do some shit. And then call another realtor about 3 hours later and do some shit. And then, so like, that was the kind of prospecting. I never had this kind of a discipline, which is really, and then you're right. I think it's mindset, skill set, daily activity. That's what we're talking about. And that's what the numbers part of this is. Is there anything else that you want people to know? Because everybody has that call reluctance at times. Like what are your tips for getting past call reluctance? Because that's a pretty common thing in sales where almost everybody has it. What's the big secret there?
Well, there's three mindsets that stop salespeople. One is procrastination, one is perfectionism, and the other one is paralysis by analysis, right? And so procrastination is usually just fear, right? I don't love getting on the phone because I'm afraid someone's going to say no, or I'm not going to know what to say, or whatever, right? So they procrastinate, they put it off. I'm going to do it later, right? Type of thing. Perfectionism is I got to know it all first, right? They're the people that are going to take what we just talked about, and I'm going to keep practicing my script till I think it's perfect. Well, it may never be perfect, right? At some point in time, you have to do, right? Like you can't just practice forever, right? And the other one is paralysis from analysis, right? So people want to analyze, say for instance, I'm going to spend all my time analyzing who I should call, right? Like I'm going to spend hours upon hours and hours, just trying to analyze this and are they the right and stuff like that. You definitely need to do some research, but don't go down that rabbit hole where, I got to know everything about them since they were 12 years old.
And there's no activity. Yeah. Like you said, you don't do anything. You just keep you keep getting ready. Ready. Get ready, get set, get ready, get set, get ready, get set, right? And nobody's going. No, you never hit go.
I mean, prospecting is a contact sport, right? So you got to contact people. you got to get on the phone. You got to call them. You got to have a conversation, right? You're never going to go anywhere if you don't do that. And yes, you're going to get some rejection, and you're going to have some things not go right and stuff like that. But the advantage of actually concentrating that into hour blocks is you get it over with quick, right? I love the movie Moneyball when he asks him, he goes, would you rather take a shot to the head or 5 to the chest and bleed out, right? Just get it over with, right? Just one shot, boom, you're done, right? And then
harsh example, but yeah, I got you. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. All right, well, dude,
I'm super excited to be here. I can't wait to see what we do with this.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be, like I said, I think that we maybe right now, just and even based on all the conversations that you and I had, my takeaway from this one is that you've kind of demystified this a little bit for us and made me think that, you know what, this isn't as challenging as we've made it, even after all these years. It's not as challenging as we've made it. It's still a challenge, but it isn't this big, massive thing. This is like, no, like, here's the steps. So this is really cool. This is awesome. All right, man. Thanks a lot, Dean. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Dave.